What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about something that is exciting and confusing at the same time. Genetics. We're going to dive into understanding genetics from a really simple standpoint, because especially if you're into ball pythons, it's really hard to understand everything that's going on. So let's get started. Okay, so first we need to understand a few terms. So you may have heard the terms dominant, codominant, or incomplete dominant, and recessive. We're going to break these down and what they actually mean. We also need to understand terms like genotype and phenotype. Genotype is the combination of genes that the animal has, and the phenotype is what the animal actually looks like. It's important to understand the difference between those two things, as they do get thrown around from time to time, and sometimes it'll leave you scratching your head. Okay, guys, so we're going to break this down. So we're going to start up here with the dominant gene. So let's take a gene. We're going to talk about ball pythons really quick. Let's take a gene like pinstripe. So I can breed a pinstripe ball python to a normal ball python, and I'm going to get normals and I'm going to get pinstripes. I can also take a pinstripe and breed it to another pinstripe, and I'll get all pinstripes. There's no next level to go with the gene. That's what makes it a dominant gene. It is what it is. An incomplete dominant gene. Let's change this up a little bit. Let's think about Mojave or lesser or butter, right? So if I breed one of those to a normal, I'll make more Mojaves and I'll make normals. Now, if I take that Mojave and I breed it to another Mojave, I'm gonna get Mojaves and the super form, which is the blue-eyed leucistic. So the blue-eyed leucistic is the complete homozygous, the complete dominant variation of Mojave. If I bred a super Mojave or a blue-eyed leucistic to a normal, I'm going to get everything out of that is going to be Mojave, because it is a full expression of what Mojave is, that blue-eyed leucistic. So when I breed it to a normal, all of those resulting offspring would be Mojaves. Similarly, regardless of what I bred that blue-eyed leucistic to, every single baby will be Mojave. If there's other genes in the mix, then there'll be other genes added in, but they would all, at a minimum, be Mojave. The recessives. A recessive needs to be bred either to itself or to an animal that is heterozygous or carrying the gene to provide visual phenotypes. So let's take a look at albinism, albino. It's across all the different snake species, reptile species. If we look at an albino and I want to make more albinos, I need to breed it either to another albino. I need to find an animal that is het for albino, which means its parent was an albino. One of its parents was an albino. So it's not expressing albino. It might look like a normal animal, but it carries the albino gene. So if I take albino and breed it to a gene carrier or a het animal, I can make albinos and more het albinos. And lastly, if I need to make my own albinos because I can't find hets and I can't find another visual, I'm going to take that albino and breed it to a normal, and that entire clutch will all be normal looking animals, but they'll be carrying the albino genes. They'll be heterozygous animals. Another way that we can look at this is by using something called a Punnett square. So we're going to take these Punnett squares and we're going to focus on recessive genes. So we're going to think albinism or albino. Very easy. So the way we're going to label this, here, we're going to do a pairing as if it was albino to albino. So the visual recessive gene is going to be represented by two lowercase a's. So this is parent 1 and parent 2. So when we start to break this down, we're literally just going to go from here to here, right? So we get two little a's. So of course, that's like best case, right? If you can breed visual to visual, of course that's what you want. We're gonna come over here and we're gonna do albino to a het. So, again, we've got our albino, and our het is going to be represented by a big A and a little a. If I take a visual albino and I pair it to a het, on average, about half of my babies will be albino. That's also not bad. It's really important to mention here, with the exception of albino to albino and our last one, albino to normal, that we're talking about averages here. So when I say albino to het, on average, we're going to get half of the clutch being albinos. Now, if you had 5 eggs, the next one could go either way. But regardless, we're talking about averages here. So if you did 4 clutches of 4 eggs each of albino to het, on average about half of those babies would be albinos. Now that means one clutch could have all hets and one clutch could be all albinos. So now I'm going to take my albino animal and I'm going to pair it to a normal. So a full normal animal we're going to represent with 2 capital A's. Now, this is great if you're trying to build up a project and you're like, man, I need some more hets, or I need to be able to make some hets. So what can I do? I'm going to take my visual animal and I'm going to breed it to a normal or something to make those hets. As long as you have a visual in your pairing, all of your resulting offspring will be gene carriers or hets. Okay, so since we're still in ball python land, here we are looking at a Punnett square with an incomplete dominant gene. So this is if I'm trying to produce the super form or the full homozygous expression, right? And I want to breed my Mojave to another Mojave. So here we have my Punnett square here. So we're going to represent Mojave by a capital M and a lowercase m. One in every 4 will be normal. 1 in every 4 would be your bell. And about half of your clutch would be Mojaves. Now, why does it work out that way? Well, Mojave is obviously your primary gene in the mix here. So, but Mojave itself is not a dominant gene. So you have this room for this normal here. And then, of course, you have the room for your bell. So again, this is on average. You could breed a Mojave to a Mojave and get all bells, or 3 bells and 1 Mojave, or 3 normals and 1 Mojave. So again, this is all about a law of averages. So I have to give props to all of the people that are trying to get into the breeding world right now and trying to understand genetics right now, because man, when I started learning all these genetics and stuff, it was nowhere near as complex as it is in today's world. So kudos to you guys for trying to understand everything that's going on. I hope this helped you out a little bit, at least to basically understand how these genes are transferred across the board, and hopefully will help you make some cool decisions on what you want to pair in the future. I'll see you guys next time.